let me ask you a critical question as it pertains to your work life. Do you think you would be more productive if you worked from home or outside of the office entirely? Well, our friends at Forbes have chimed in with this nugget of information. They report that 71% of today's workforce say if they work from home or remotely, it helps to improve their overall work-life balance. Meanwhile, our friends at Mercer, a workplace benefits HR consulting firm, conducted a survey of over 800 employers earlier this year and had found that 94% of employers reported that productivity increased or stayed the same once their employees started working from home. And if you want some Canadian flavor added to this very discussion, our friends over at Statistics Canada chimed in with this. The vast majority of teleworkers reported being as productive or more efficient if they worked from home by an average of approximately 90%. Now that I have given you statistical validation to this very discussion, I want to introduce you to Shane Spraggs. For over 25 years, Spraggs has been driving successful projects and increasing their productivity for media and software companies as the CEO of Virtira. Spraggs has worked with clients as big as Disney and has focused on productivity for Fortune 100 clients and adding value and increasing their profitability and productivity to their bottom line. He's a systems and strategies guy who helps to increase the performance and vitality of remote-based teams. Furthermore, in 2023, Spraggs co-authored the book The Power of Remote as an essential guide to modern team management, and Spraggs joined me this week to have an in-depth discussion about increasing productivity, happiness, and morale at work. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's dive into this conversation about how to maximize our work life and get the most out of our production when we go to our 9 to 5, whether it's inside or outside of the office. Let's have this conversation. So let's get sharing, Shane. So if you're ready, I wish you a good Friday morning, and I'm delighted to engage in conversation with you all about productivity and leadership. Great to see you this morning, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely no. Shane, I know for the last quarter of a century, you've been all about helping both software and media brands sort of increase their productivity and really the way they operate as the CEO of Virtira. So I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by you telling me about your work and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
So yeah, Virtira is a productivity company, and what we offer to companies are are people, not software. We have an incredible team of highly productive individuals who really like helping out people. And our core areas of expertise are in sales operations or sales support, as well as project management. But we've been known to give people some advice on occasion on business operations as well. My cool thing about my company is we're spread out all across Canada. I'm on the West Coast, and most of my team's out east. So we play with 4 time zones, and allows us to support anyone across North America with in the time zone that they're working in. So we also hire people in rural areas as opposed to people who are in larger centers. And that gives us a great access to some amazing talent that otherwise wouldn't be able to work with large international companies in the States. So it's a fantastic little operation, and we get to help people be more productive, which I can't complain about.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that a wealth of experience working with a number of different people, you're the perfect person to ask this question about diversity and inclusion when it comes to sort of diversifying your workforce. So what do you think is the key to embracing a diverse or inclusive culture when it comes to creating a productive culture at work?
Absolutely, yeah. So for me, diversity starts with having a strong set of corporate values. And so the people who are running the company or set the company up have started from the get-go with a strong sense of who they are. And so when they're hiring someone, they can look for the right people. From my standpoint, you can hire 2 completely different people, different backgrounds, different experiences, different beliefs. But if they can share the same values, now you have something common you can anchor your company on. And it's that intersection that allows everyone to work well together. So, as I mentioned, we tend to hire people in rural communities, often those that have followed a spouse who earns more, or they're there to take care of an infirm parent, or they're just past the point where they've been focusing all their effort on young children. And so we that's one of for me, we look for people who have gaps in their CVs, and look for individuals who may not be a good hire for other companies, or may not have opportunities in their local area. And so for me, the diversity is a key to innovation. So when everyone is the same, you end up with the same ideas, and it stifles growth. So different ideas from diverse backgrounds are essential for new ideas and innovation.
Yeah, and can you tell something about the perspective that diversity can offer? Shane, I was born with cerebral palsy, so outside of hosting this podcast, I also work with organizations to infuse more people with physical and intellectual disabilities into the workforce. So talk to me about the power of perspective and the way that diversity can be an ally in organizations.
I'll start with remote work. Remote work obviously opens up a lot of doors for people with disabilities, because obviously the home office is far more accessible than the offices you tend to have to work in. But in terms of it opening up the opportunities for organizations, as I just mentioned, the diversity tends to connect people with different ideas and allows new ways of thinking to create new products and new solutions, and ultimately results in a better, productive, and more successful organization, because it can innovate. And it's really that key word, innovation, that really comes down to diversification. Is when you have a variety of people involved in your organization, you get more innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. And from an overall perspective, Shane, I'm wondering how you view the concept of having keys to success both in business and in life. How do you think those two are interconnected?
Well, this is one of these things that came out of the pandemic. A lot of people talk about how remote work came out of the pandemic. I think that's a byproduct. It's kind of gone through its ups and downs. We're seeing a lot more people going back to the office now. We're seeing a lot more hybrid work, but the nature of work's changed, not because people realize that they can work from home and save the 2 hours of the commute that they're doing every day. But what has really happened over the course of the last while is people are realizing that there's more to life than just work, and that people are able to make more use out of the day-to-day, the time that they're not working. And indeed, at Virtira, one of the things we noticed is that when we hire someone who has an active social life, an active outside of work life, they tend actually to be better employees. And so, for companies should lean into that and look for ways to offer people more flexibility with their work life balance, and support a reasonable amount of working hours a week, so people can go and recharge, and when they go out into their life and come back to work recharged, they offer more value to the organization. So for me, the key to work in life is to not look at one or the other, but to look at them as a whole. And that for me, I really enjoy doing what I do. And so you look for someone who enjoys doing. You don't want to do the same thing full 24/7. It's good for people to have hobbies, groups that they belong to, sports activities, other, whatever it might be. For me, it's hiking. I go out every day and I hike, and I look forward each year to a big hike. It's about integrating that work-life balance into your life.
Yeah, so let's build on that and talk about leadership at work. And how do you think remote work has really changed the perspective of corporate leaders? What are your thoughts there?
Well, more recently, I've been talking about how remote work is really now just work. The other thing that happened during the pandemic is that everything changed. This conversation would have been a phone call 3 years ago for most people, but now, because of the pandemic, because of the rise of Zoom, because of those 3 years we went through, a lot of the tools that were commonplace mostly in high tech and software development are now more common in all areas of the businesses. So finance, manufacturing. People are getting comfortable with the idea of jumping on a Zoom call, doing text messaging, doing instant messaging, and that's really the what's really changed over the last little while. And so, when it comes to remote work, or it comes to how some other lessons we've learned over the last while, is I'm a big proponent on the self-determination theory, and I find remote work has really highlighted the importance of recognizing what motivates people. We have self-determination theory establishes three things that people need to be motivated. One is autonomy, one is competency, and the other is relatedness. And it's that relatedness side of things that has suffered with most companies with remote work. And what needs to happen when you are when you're running a remote company is you need to lean into that relatedness side. And there's some specific techniques you can use to develop relatedness between your remote employees that most people take for granted when you go into the office. Most times relatedness, it grows organically inside the office, but you have to be more intentional about it when you work remotely.
Yeah, so I know that you're a big systems and strategist person, and you've worked with companies like Disney before. So tell me, what do you think is the blueprint to creating systems and strategies for success when it comes to remote work?
It really comes down to people, as most people will probably say. People are the ones, and treating people like your peers. Far too many senior executives look down at the people below them and think that they're not able to think for themselves, when in fact most employees know what's going on. They're just looking for some direction. They just want to, they want to make sure that the people above them are making good decisions. And so what needs to happen in a company needs to have a very strong purpose. That purpose needs to filter down into their yearly priorities, and those yearly priorities need to filter down into the tasks and work and projects that people do. And that has to be communicated well to those individuals. So everybody in the team needs to know that what they're doing is contributing to the overall purpose of the company. If it's not, they don't feel like they're offering value to in their day to day, and it begins to start hurting, I guess, in some respects, their soul. That they go to work, they do work that's not productive, it doesn't contribute to anything in the long run, and they start to question why they're there. If you can communicate to people in your company how every task and every project fits into the overall goal direction of the company, now you have a system that gets everyone on board and gets everyone moving in the right direction and makes people happy. That's the part of the relatedness angle thing. How does the work I do relate to the overall purpose of the company?
Yeah, and Shane, I know that you're all about challenging you and your staff to sort of solve organizational challenges and also maximizing productivity. So, what do you think is the key to really maximizing productivity and solving those organizational challenges?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I often wonder about why it is I enjoy making things more streamlined. It's just been something that I've innately have had in my life, my entire life. I like to, I'm the type of guy who likes to know the rules. We play Monopoly so that everyone has the same fair shake. When when I get up in the morning, and want to make breakfast, I have a routine in my mind here's the steps I'm going to take to make it happen fastest. And I'm not sure exactly where that comes from, but it's part of who I am, and it's not unique to me. And we tend to we tend to hire people who have those established beliefs and just want to help people out. And so when we get in a situation where quite often we have plenty of examples where people will say they have a problem, and our team is most often the ones that will step up and put their hand up to say, I can help you with that. I'll figure that out, how to do that. And we just like to solve problems, just like to figure out how do we make this work faster? And how do we ensure that the work is being done as efficiently as possible? But there are some basic guidelines to follow. And for me, it's there's a rule of threes. So if you're going to try something, try it for 3 times before you question it. I try not to look at something and find out what's not going to work with it before trying it. Use data-driven decisions, and if someone says, I think we should have a meeting on this, well, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. Let's do it 3 times, and then after 3 times, we'll reflect on whether it's the right change. And what I find is that even in the worst case scenarios, you might throw away 90% of what you change, but keep 10. And that 10% might lead you to some new innovation, some new changes that you would never have done before if you hadn't allowed that change to happen.
Yeah, and so just before I ask you about your book, I'm curious to ask you about creating a competitive advantage within the workplace, specifically in the work that you do to help remote teams sort of flourish and thrive. And so I'm curious, how do you think businesses can create a competitive advantage moving forward, and how can they use it to create a competitive fight?
Yeah, the remote work in a sense, there's a great example of companies need to lean in to the results that remote work has demonstrated, and not fight it. And it's something that I've noticed throughout my entire career. Back in the early 2000s, there was a huge push for companies to bring everybody into a large open space environment, and these big offices were designed under the guise of collaboration. Everyone's going to be able to work together. because we're all under one roof, and there's no walls anymore. And really, what that was, it was an effort to control people, and it didn't make people more productive. It resulted in a huge amount of sales of headphones because people brought headphones to the office and played music throughout the day to try to drown out the noise in the area. People weren't more collaborative, and the same things come up with remote work. Certainly over the last 6 months, there's been a lot of people, a lot of companies bringing people back to work, and it's for the wrong reasons. They're missing out on this opportunity to get more out of their staff, and allow their staff to live a more full life. And the same thing is going to happen with the 4-day work week. There's been plenty of studies that show that the 4-day work week does not reduce productivity. In fact, it gives certainly knowledge workers more of an opportunity to be refreshed and be more productive or more creative during the week than if they work 40 hours or longer. And so my recommendation is for companies to listen to the results and facts out there, and consider how you can get the most out of your people. If you don't, at the end of the day, if you don't care about people and all you care about is money, then at the very least you should be able to do the math and say, okay, by treating people this way, we make more money. And so my hope is that at the very least, and maybe for the wrong intentions, companies will at least start seeing this as a way to make more money off people, and then we'll get people will get the benefit from it at the very least. But my hope is, of course, that people, the CEOs and leaders of these organizations, see that is an intrinsic value for their business as well, and it makes their company more attractive to work for, and it retains people longer, reduces costs, makes people happier, creates better results, and so on and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Ken, let's talk about the book that you co-authored called The Power of Remote. And
here it is here.
Yeah, and I know it's all about sort of the modern team management model and how we can help teams sort of manage their teams better. So tell me all about the book and what it's all about, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we started working remotely about 15 years ago. So the company's been remote for a long time. And when the pandemic hit, we felt that this was an opportunity for us to share all of the experience we've had up to date with working remotely in an effort to help other teams do the same. The book unfortunately went through some delays, and we didn't get out until February of this year. But it's already been well received, and it was a bestseller in the HR category on Amazon, which we're proud of. It's less of a book and more of a manual. It is chock full of recommendations and steps to take to manage remote teams. And I couldn't get through all of it if I started. And because on the surface there are a lot of little things you need to take into consideration when you work remotely. In the big picture, as I mentioned with the self-determination theory, it really is, a lot of it is all about building relatedness, but how to make sure that when you run a company, you take into consideration how people are going to be get their autonomy out of the work they're doing, and they get their competency out of the work they're doing, and again how you keep things related to them, and it all kind of boils down into that. And we also talk about a few examples of past projects and past historic things that happened that resulted in people learning over time how to maximize remote work productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shay, going back to the relatedness, we've talked a lot about that today, and I'm also curious if you see a sort of a bonding link between being relatable and allyship in the workforce, and I'm wondering your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. The having a ally in the workforce is vital for diversity, and having certainly a leader who is thinks in terms of diversity is very important. And if you one of the examples I would use is that when when we onboard somebody, after we hire somebody, we make sure that they have a hiring buddy, what I guess is another way of looking at it, as an ally when they join the company, so that this person isn't necessarily related to isn't necessarily their manager or even somebody in their department, but it's someone who they can bond with immediately after being hired, and they can show them the ropes, answer questions that maybe they haven't received answers for, and even ask stupid questions if they have them, and be that first point of contact inside of a business. And so having individuals inside the business who care about the people, maybe even not even in a management position, is critical.
Yeah, and Chad, how do you think innovation and productivity are also connected? Because when employees work for a company that they view to be innovative and receptive to new ideas, then productivity can really be maximized, can't it?
Yeah, well, innovation is a byproduct of productivity. I mean, it's what it creates. It's if productivity is the outcome, innovation is the impact that you will have, and a highly productive company will simply innovate faster, and be able to churn through what works and more importantly what doesn't work faster. And it is productivity for me is removing the barriers to work, looking at the things that might be slowing you down, looking at the things that get in your way, and a lot of it comes down to communication and making sure people are well informed, making sure people have a buy-in into the work that they're doing, and making sure the work is the right size of work. So making sure that the projects they're working on are reasonable. They're not too they're not too difficult to deliver on time, and that you have a connection to who's receiving the work. And so if you are building a product or service for a customer, you need to make sure that they're involved in the process so that what you build is the right thing for them as well. Obviously, you can be very productive building something the wrong thing, and then that prevents you from that. If you build the wrong thing and it's not useful, then it's not. Are you still being productive? Probably not. So.
Yeah, and when we talk about squeezing the most productivity out of a workforce and in life, my friend, I think it's also connected to internal or intrinsic motivation. So, what's your advice to anyone watching this in the corporate world, or if they run a business, about also squeezing the most productivity out of life? Because we all just have one life to live, so it's
Yeah.
important to maximize the productivity out of life, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it has to start from the top. Look, companies that where individuals work 60, 70 hours a week, they do so because that's the culture that the leadership team establishes, right? There was back in the earlier days, people would wait for the boss to leave before they went home, and whether or not they were being productive or not. So for me, the company plays a huge role in establishing the guardrails required to make sure people know that they have to go home, and understand the value of rest. That if you have a 3-day weekend, or a 4-day weekend with Thanksgiving, you're going to come back from that far more ready to work on Monday, and the work you're going to do is probably going to be done faster, better, and more succinctly than it would have been if you had been trudging through 60 hours worth of work. So it really comes down to the employer plays a huge role in establishing the boundaries and setting expectation for their staff to go out and get refreshed in life and have a come back to work with ready to be productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And establishing that consistency can also breed creativity in the workplace, can it? So tell me about your thoughts on the importance of emphasizing both consistency and creativity when it comes to productivity as well.
Well, creativity is it's a unique thing. It's hard to mandate creativity. It's hard. People need a spark. You've all heard about people who have writer's block. That's because there's something that's preventing them from getting that spark started, and people have a really hard time being creative when they're under pressure, have a lot of anxiety. There's there may be concerns about things at home, things at the office, and so there's a value in managing that, helping people reduce those anxieties and reduce those fears they might have, so they can focus on being creative, and then creating the environments for creativity. I personally think that working from home is a great place to be productive, because you can be in creative. You can be in a quiet area that it's really hard to create quiet and in an office. In the days where I worked in an office, as I mentioned earlier, we'd have people wearing headphones all day just to block out the noises and allow them to focus on the work that they're doing. So remote work gives people that opportunity to unplug from the noise and be more creative.
Yeah, and do you think remote work is sort of the wave of the future? Because people are really embracing the concept of remote work now, aren't they?
Yeah, well, it's going through waves, because I would say over the last 6 months there was a lot more focus on larger organizations bringing people back to the office. Now, if you consider where they are, there's a lot of pressure on them to fill their offices, to fill the downtowns, because there's a lot of businesses, a lot of mom and pop shops who sell food and amenities that we're relying on the downtown office worker in order to be successful as well. So I think that had to happen for us to get somewhat back to let that pendulum swing a little bit more. But if you start to really think about it, from where do companies come from? All the big companies that we have today, the Google, the Microsoft, and whatnot, they all started in the garage. Some of them quite literally started in the garage. Well, if you're an entrepreneur these days and you are starting in your home, what's the likelihood you're going to stay? Okay, well, I'm going to spend $3,000 a month on an office, instead of saying I'm going to spend that money maybe on hiring somebody new to help me make this business more successful. And what the likelihood that person's going to be in the same town? They're going to take advantage of the full workforce available to them across the world. And what I'm getting at is simply that we're going to see more and more startups that are entirely remote, and they're going to continue growing remotely. And there won't really be a time when companies going to say, "Hey, we've got 500 people now. Let's get we better have an office." Well, where do you put it? You've got people all across the world who are working for this organization. So I think we're just by that simple sound logic, we're going to see remote work take over the next 20 years.
Yeah, and Shane, I'm curious for you to tell me your thoughts on the notion of acceptance and really embracing opinions of all people. So if you had one wish and you could really change the conversation about the notion of acceptance, I'm wondering what that wish would be and why.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, it would be that acceptance was so accepted that we wouldn't even have to have the word of acceptance. It would just be, it would we would just um, it wouldn't even be a consideration. We wouldn't have to have special programs for diversity. We wouldn't have to have, laws to protect people's freedom of speech. We wouldn't have to have rules around who people had to marry. Who could, it would just be, we would all, and I guess this is a huge wish. I hope that one of these days we'll get there, but that people will be judged for the work they do and the value what they contribute, as opposed to who they are, because really at the end of the day, that who they are and what they decide to choose to do and really doesn't matter to other people. And so getting to a place where it's like, it's like a young kid who, when they're first growing up, they don't understand that even the concept of evil until they experience it, and then from that point forward, everything's tinged with that evilness. Well, we need to be able to get to a place where, as kids grow up, they never have to know about the fact that people aren't accepted. And again, it's a huge wish. I don't know if we'll get there as a society, but I hope we can make some progress towards it.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Shane, I know you're coming to me from Western Canada, and I live here in Windsor. And anytime I get a chance to interview a fellow Canadian, I always ask them, what's the best part about being Canadian, and how do you best embrace the Canadian culture?
What I can tell, my experience is Canadians just like to help out. We're they certainly have, the people we hire at our company exemplify this, and there's a strong sense of, we want to help others, and I think that it's demonstrated in the world with our desire to help out with in times of war or times of famine or times of emergencies. People come together and help out, and I hope we continue seeing Canadians being the leaders and forefront in that, because it's a much better place to be in the world, a much better position to be in the world than to be someone on the other side of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shane, outside of work, I'm curious, how do you enrich your life? So how do you find your inner center and really reconnect with yourself? I know you mentioned hiking earlier, but is there other hobbies that help you really reconnect with yourself?
Yeah, I actually play harmonica. So I have a small trio that we're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to make any albums, but once a week we get together, and it is a real opportunity to just let go, and we enjoy it. It's a creative release, and it gives me something to look forward to, it's sort of my thing I look forward to each week.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know, maybe you'll stumble on something that you can cobble into an album once in a while, huh?
We'll see.
Yeah. Shane, my final question for you this morning has to do with your own legacy, my friend, and how you want your legacy to be defined from a personal and professional perspective.
Well, thanks for asking. I'm pretty humble when it comes to legacy. I have a number of people in my life who have given me, who I've looked up to, and who I hope to emulate. And all I can hope for is that I do that for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways you do that was by creating this book, my friend. So tell me, finally, if people want to get connected with the good work that you do, what's the best way they can do that, and how can they get their hands on the book as well?
Yeah, well, the book's available on Amazon.com. The Power of Remote. You can come to my website, Virtira.com, or you can just look me up on LinkedIn, Shane Spraggs, and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Fantastic. Well, Shane, I really enjoyed our conversation about productivity, leadership, life, and everything in between, my friend. Your work in the space of productivity and leadership development is certainly most appreciated, along with your time on my behalf. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation and for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And it was fun. It was fun being on your show.